Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone joining us today. Welcome again to our virtual 2021 Financial Inclusion Global Initiative Symposium and to this session on the use of technology to empower financial consumer alternative dispute resolution and complaints handling. My name is John Boedu, and I am part of the World Bank's Financial Inclusion and Consumer Protection team. I will be moderating this session today, and shortly I will be introducing you to our panel of presenters. Before I do so, I wanted to say a brief word about the Financial Inclusion Global Initiative, which many of you already know is also referred to as FIGI. FIGI is a partnership between the World Bank Group, the Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructure of the Bank for International Settlements, and the International Telecommunications Union. It is kindly funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to support and accelerate implementation of country-led reforms to meet important national financial inclusion targets and ultimately the global universal financial access goal. The FIGI program has been funding implementations in 3 countries, China, Egypt, and Mexico, and I myself and several of the panel members have worked on some of these implementations, and has also been supporting working groups to address 3 sets of outstanding challenges for universal financial access achievement: electronic payments acceptance, digital ID for financial services, and security infrastructure and trust. And finally, it has hosted 3 symposia, the last one being the one that you've joined today. So thank you for joining us for this 3rd and final edition of the FIGI Symposium, which has been a forum for dialogue between telecom and financial sector authorities, providers, and a wide range of other interested stakeholders. And with that, we're going to start this session. Next slide, please. So ensuring that consumers have access to appropriate and effective alternative dispute resolution is recognized internationally as a key part of having effective financial consumer protection in a country. For example, it's highlighted in the World Bank's Financial Consumer Protection Good Practices, as well as by the OECD's High-Level Principles of Financial Consumer Protection. When we talk about alternative dispute resolution, or ADR for short, we are talking about mechanisms that are effectively an alternative for consumers to use to the court system, which, as you will appreciate, is often a complex, expensive, and daunting proposition for a lot of consumers, as a means of dealing with disputes that they have with the financial services providers, and particularly disputes that they have not been able to deal with through the financial services providers' internal complaints handling processes. ADR mechanisms take a variety of forms in different countries. Financial ombudsman schemes are a prime example, but not the only one. Today, we happen to have representatives from 3 financial ombudsman schemes internationally. International good practice tells us that there are several elements that need to be addressed in order to achieve good financial consumer ADR. This slide summarizes them. I won't go through them all, but I wanted to highlight a couple. They include, for example, ensuring accessibility for consumers to ADR mechanisms. And at its simplest, this means making sure that the ADR mechanism available to consumers is well known, easy to use, and free for them to access. It also includes ensuring efficiency and effectiveness of ADR mechanisms. And again, in simple terms, this looks at ensuring that there is a good quality complaints handling service and that it achieves consistent outcomes across complaints. Now, technology has been important for a while, but it's gaining more and more importance in achieving these aims. For example, it can help in overcoming obstacles around accessibility, such as physical distances or remoteness that consumers might face, something that has also been highlighted during the pandemic we are all experiencing at the moment with difficulties of movement for people. It can also assist in enhancing effectiveness and efficiency, such as by improving complaints capture and processing by schemes, and also enhancing openness of schemes, both for consumers and financial services providers, so that they can better see and understand what might be happening through the complaints process. So in this session, which is co-presented by 3 international financial services ombudsmen, as I said, we're going to be exploring practical issues around the implementation of technology for these purposes, country experiences, and suggestions about how technology can be leveraged further for this purpose. Next slide, please. So now I'm pleased to introduce to you our panel of speakers. Douglas Melville is the Principal Ombudsman and Chief Executive of the Channel Islands Financial Ombudsman Service. He's also the former Canadian Ombudsman for Banking Service and Investment. And he also has extensive experience as an international consultant assisting on ADR issues. Nicholas Sladen is the New Zealand Banking Ombudsman and also an executive member of the Australian and New Zealand Ombudsman Association. And she also has experience as an international consultant on ADR. And Mr. Melville and Ms. Sladen are both joining us live for this session. Mr. Lu Xiang is the Deputy Director of the Financial Ombudsman Service of Shanghai, which is the first financial ombudsman service that was set up in China, and which continues to be a reference point for implementation of financial ADR schemes in China nationally. And as you'll hear in this presentation, there's been a significant rollout of financial ADR schemes in China over the last couple of years. And Deputy Director Lu has kindly pre-recorded a presentation for this event. Next slide, please. So in terms of our agenda, Mr. Melville is going to present first, and he's going to be talking about the present, future, and the challenges of using technology to achieve the aims I've already mentioned. He will set out a bit of a framework about thinking about these issues, and also in doing so share some experiences both that he has had in implementing technology and thinking about technology, heading up several ADR schemes, and also observations from other international examples. We are then going to have two deep dives into international experiences with technology and ADR. First, Ms. Sladen is going to focus on the experiences of the New Zealand Banking Ombudsman Service and also mention some other international observations. And then, as I mentioned, Director Lu, through a pre-recorded presentation, is going to talk about the experience in China, and particularly in relation to the Shanghai Financial Ombudsman Service in implementing technology. Following these three presentations, we're going to have a Q&A session, and we really encourage you to share questions throughout. If you've joined previous sessions of the symposium, you'll know this already, but there is a Q&A chat function in Zoom. If you share your questions throughout as they come to you, I'm going to do my best to ask as many of those questions of the presenters as I can during the Q&A session. And finally, and again, this will be familiar to you, at the end, I will remind you if you could fill out a very quick survey at the end of the session. And with that, I'm very happy to hand over to Doug Melville for the first of our presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. So good morning from where I am to all of you. Thanks for joining, and thank you for the invitation to be part of this morning. It's fallen to me to set out a bit of the framework, as Jan mentioned, and I wanted to look at three things. The present, the current state of affairs from the perspective of a up to my eyeballs practitioner dealing with volumes of complaints each day. The future as empowered by technology in the work that we do, and some of the challenges that it's thrown up for us. So the next slide, please. This will give you a sense of what I propose to cover here in the next 24 minutes. Failing that, if I run over, you will hear Jan kindly remind me, and we will move on to the next speaker quite presently. So next slide, please. Getting into the present day situation. This is primarily about using technology to empower the accessibility for consumers to be able to access effective alternative dispute resolution. I think the power of technology is its ability to bridge the gaps that inherently exist in our practice. And it's trying to get complainants and their ADR provider and the financial service providers to all be able to work together effectively to respond and to resolve complaints. The technology does this in several ways that I think are intuitively obvious, but I think perhaps bear reminding here, because the technology works in different ways to achieve these different objectives. Firstly, it broadens the number of access channels that consumers can use to find us. And it's not just working with us, but it's also awareness. Having consumers know that there's an option to reach out to if they're not able to resolve their complaint with their provider. But it's also being able to have that initial and ongoing contact. And particularly this last year, technology has made it possible for a lot of us to continue in this regard, despite perhaps having to shift the emphasis of channels that we would normally use in communicating with consumers, but also with the firms themselves. And you've seen this being used, live chat and chat bots. The Ombudsman Service in Australia makes great use of these. And more recently of interest is the Russian Federation has just announced that they'll actually do live answering of video calls into their office, given the explosive growth in the use of video conferencing at a retail level by individual consumers like us. The language of interaction is a really interesting issue. Some time ago, we discovered in Canada the ability to source within 60 seconds an online ability to translate live telephone technology, using that technology to, for example, figure out what the language was of the person calling us on the line. And in Canada, being a country of immigrants, this was particularly important because there were communities that did not have that facility in English to be able to explain their complaint. So to be able to get someone in real time able to come on the line and provide effective translation of that initial contact call, and perhaps even on a booked basis in advance to help us translate key interview issues, was critical to our ability to broaden out our service across those communities and the diversity of the markets that we handled. The technology also enables a broader range of service options and global reach. So the new service I'm working with in the British Channel Islands is actually the first time that I've worked on a global mandate, because the international financial centers in the Channel Islands, their customer base is truly global. And we find ourselves on a daily basis working across all time zones around the world, trying to accept complaints and to gather information from individuals, even though our workday tends to be the more traditional 8 in the morning till 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and on British time. So technology has enabled us to be able to broaden that service concept to be able to accommodate what is an increasingly global nature of financial services around the world. It also provides an easy access point via the use of portals to relevant information for both parties to a complaint. So for example, the ability to upload the information from the consumer about the complaint that they have, for the firm to be able to do the same and upload that information, to be able to share the information submitted in support of the complaint with both parties, which is a procedural requirement that we have, not just under our law, but in terms of procedural fairness of the process that we are bringing the parties through. The Canadians at the Ombudsman for Banking Services and Investments, based in Toronto, recently put together a very robust platform to enable them to do that. And I'll come back to that later in the presentation from a security standpoint, because there are considerations to think of there. Next slide, please. So one of the big challenges and opportunities here is that the technology can enable the paperless office, which is an absolutely wonderful transition. I remember starting out in this line of work when it was very heavily paper intensive, and some of my colleagues will still accuse me of being perhaps too paper-based when I print something out to proofread it, because it's still more effective for me to do so. But for a lot of new schemes, particularly several in emerging markets of late, by the time you actually commence your operation, there can sometimes be filing cabinets or rooms full of material that have been sent in waiting for you to commence your operation, just to start resolving the complaints. And it's situations like that that really challenge new schemes that are getting off the market, starting up. And if you look at the situation of this past year with COVID, frankly, being able to operate in a paperless environment was frankly a survival strategy. To be able to cut over from working in an office that had to be closed due to public health considerations to enable work from home for an investigative and customer service team, you could not function without being in a paperless environment. The key to making this work is to have that alignment to your workflow so that the technology helps instead of hinders. And I know you sometimes hear those expressions about the technology should be serving our work. It shouldn't be us serving what the technology demands. And that's a really important point in the type of work that we do here. The complaint management system is often described as the beating heart of an alternative dispute resolution scheme. It's the case file record. It's not the material provided by the parties, although often it will link to those. It's really the record that's created by the complaint that's sent in to you. The challenge is that most of these complaint management systems, or CMSs as we describe them, have been adopted from sales support customer relationship management applications, basically databases that were designed for sales support. And they've tended to be the types of things that have been adapted to the use of ADR schemes around the world. Attempts at doing bespoke applications for complaint handling and alternative dispute resolution have had mixed results. Doing it yourself is very complex and very expensive. The folks in the United Kingdom and Australia, Canada, and ourselves in the Channel Islands have made attempts to do it this way. New schemes tend to go shopping for tech solutions early on in their development, looking at off-the-shelf pieces. It's a real challenge because for small-scale ADR providers, they've got very few viable off-the-shelf options. And we often recommend that you start very low tech, an Excel spreadsheet or Microsoft Access or something along those lines, to first learn about the type of information you want and drive the future development from what you learn, doing it in a very simple way. Because there's no better way to get a handle on the data that you have and the data that you find you will need in order to effectively perform your role going forward. But integrating all of that into your own workflow is the biggest source of complexity and expense because it diverts you away from the shared application code of what's been developed for you. And constant changes to that code can cause some real issues because if it's not your code that you're working with, but someone else's that you're licensed to have, then any bespoke developments take you away from that core code and the updates that might be made to it over time. And you suddenly find yourself paying a license for something that no longer is closely aligned to the original material that you'd paid for. Good workflow integration is also very key to your data quality and efficiency, but it comes at higher implementation cost and risk. And I think for those of us that are not IT experts, but are in the ADR schemes, this is probably the biggest trade-off that we find ourselves making. Next slide, please. So this is just a simplified example of what the workflow can look like in an ADR scheme, handling things from basic inquiries, many of which do not actually become complaints, to the receipt of actual complaints and the review that your team performs against your mandate, because often some of the complaints that will be brought to you are not actually falling within your powers to deal with, and you have to refer folks elsewhere. The complaint intake process, gathering the information you need on the individual, but also the information related to the complaint itself. And many schemes will start off with an informal mediation type effort. For some, the entire focus is on mediation. For example, the Shanghai Financial Ombudsman Service that we'll hear from with Director Liu is patterned off a mediation type offer for dispute resolution. For those that go beyond that, you end up with investigative processes leading to a decision. Some are binding, some are non-binding, depending on the powers given to the scheme by statute, or informally by contract, those that have arisen from industry schemes. Ultimately, if there are formal decisions, you can end up with court enforcement required for decisions. And then you get to the other softer part of our value in the marketplace, which is taking what we've learned from complaints and provided that feedback to industry and the regulator and the general public to avoid future problems, whether it's through regulation or legislation. But generally what you're looking for is to achieve that market conduct change over time that generally provides a higher level of consumer protection. Next slide, please. So here's the simplified three-way challenge that we find ourselves wrestling with. The upper box, the complaint management system. Many of us around the world have been working with Microsoft Dynamics as the base software application and have modified it from there to our own use and to modify it to our workflow. And if there's a challenge there, it's that in the 6 years since we've opened the office in the Channel Islands, our workflow has evolved as we've learned what was ideal for the unique mandate that we carry out there. And it's surprising how bespoke those workflows can become between schemes in different jurisdictions. But the individual case file records for the complainant and the financial service providers will be found there. In the lower left corner, email. Frequently, you've got, how do I put this? The email traffic, and it's often being done by Microsoft Outlook in many jurisdictions around the world, but not entirely. The challenge you have here is that you've got both internal and external email communications going on. And increasingly, the primary mode of communication between the parties, the ADR scheme, the consumer, and the financial service provider, is through email. It's amazing how this has supplanted telephone conversations over time. The third piece, the lower right corner, the case file itself, the material that's provided, especially in a paperless office, have tended to be provided to you electronically by the parties, or if it arrives in paper form, you're scanning it to file. Therefore, it's often in a PDF type format so that it cannot be altered, which provides that, shall you say, continuity of evidence for the integrity of your process. Often that's being in something like Microsoft SharePoint, which is very effective for creating folders. In our office, we create folders for each complaint file with a unique number identifier. And that's where we would keep all the documentation that's provided by both parties, each in a separate subfolder, so that the material provided by the provider is kept separate from that provided by the consumer. But you can see the challenge we've got here. So the question you ask is, where is the single true data repository for each case file? And the unfortunate answer is it's often in all three. And the degree to which you can try and consolidate these three batches of information, all three of which are critical to your work in resolving a complaint and to maintaining a good record of the complaint afterward, if there's either appeal mechanisms or a judicial challenge of the work that you do, you need to be able to have good, clean, and auditable storage of these three types of information. And it has proven to be really challenging to try and consolidate these down, or to have a good, clean, we use one source like a CMS that does a good job of also relating to the other two, email and stored case material. This has been, frankly, the challenge that in my previous schemes and the one I'm currently running, this has been a big challenge for us. Next slide, please. So the present situation from a quality control perspective, the technology enables us to do things right, efficient and accurate, repeatable and discrete tasks, performed by staff and sometimes automated. Keep in mind that data entry by staff would tend to have an expected 3% error rate. So for every 100 tasks, there would be 3 errors. You can imagine in a large scale operation, the degree to which that quickly creates problems from a data quality control perspective. So to the extent that you can automate automatable tasks, you can eliminate a lot of that error, provided the automation is done correctly and can work with bespoke situations as they arise. Examples of that would be auto confirmation of email as it comes into your office, complaint submission by email. Things of that nature can be very easily automated to decrease the amount of human touch aspects in your process. Technology also enables access to information to support complaint analysis by your team doing investigative work. Access to templates, searchable access to previous decisions or case studies, access to reference material, all of that can be facilitated with technology as well. The tracking of operational performance. We're all very accountable to whether it's a board of directors or governments or regulators or frankly just the general public for the operational performance against service standards and quality control. The reality is you get what you measure. So using technology to in fact measure some of these operational pieces is very important at holding us accountable for the work that we do. And then there's the bespoke inquiries and standardized reporting that improve the transparency of our operation, which can sometimes look like a black box to the outside world. Performance management, both managerial for internal as well as board of directors and other oversight, and enabling us to continually improve the operation as we evolve. These are learning systems, and it's really important to have that information provided as a feedback mechanism to help us improve what we do and how we do it going forward. Next slide, please. So one piece that I really wanted to demonstrate for folks is, and that we're looking at quite intensively, is the idea of robotic process automation, or RPA. And this is something that's pretty hot in IT right now for some reasons I'll get into in a moment. But this is a single graphic that, if you look at all the different complex pieces of it, gives you an idea of why it might be exciting for folks in our line of work, because it touches on a lot of the challenges that we're wrestling with as ADR schemes, both small ones and large ones. So next slide, please. What RPA enables us to do is, frankly, apply IT to the discrete human tasks to do it better, faster, with more accuracy, and therefore more efficiently, particularly if you have the scale that enables you to divert your staff to other more high-value tasks. It can eliminate human error on the tasks, but again, provided that you're programming it correctly to do each task that you seek to automate. And it really does, in our experience, free up staff capacity for other higher value activities. And some of those bespoke and less repetitive tasks, like, I know this is radical, but communicating with the parties and doing the case file analysis that allows people to really understand the subtleties of a complaint. And often that's the key in achieving early resolution of complaints without necessarily going to the end state of your process on every complaint. We find ourselves able to mediate out about 2/3 of the complaints in our office without having to go to a final binding decision, as we're empowered to do under our law. That's a huge lift in terms of efficiency, and timeliness enables us to get at those more quickly and perhaps more, how do I put it, less process driven. It's more of a cathartic process for the consumer to be able to have that mediated type outcome. Simple applications of it can include things like case file creation, or the filing of evidence and correspondence in various formats, the automated assembly of files for review, standard confirmations, update communications at regular intervals, and automated generation of the reports. Part of the value of that is that it provides an audit trail of all those tasks that have been automated, which is really important. And the real benefit, in my experience, is that you can use RPA with most existing IT platforms. So it lowers the cost and the risk associated with some of these new developments. You can add these discrete automated abilities working with what you already have, rather than spending a great deal to recode your base systems. And this is the part for us that's been quite exciting, because you can experiment with it on discrete areas of your operation without undermining the code that is the lifeblood of your operation. Being able to align it to process flow also allows you to change it as your workflow adapts as well, without again having to recode necessarily your core CMS. Next slide, please. The other aspect of the future we're looking at is online dispute resolution. And I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding around this. It's not just about technology enabling us as ADR providers. It's about replacing us. It's about providing a process of self-driven dispute resolution between the parties that's enabled by technology that allows them to directly communicate with each other, share each of their perspectives on the underlying issue, expressing what they want to resolve the issue, and then providing a good process for settlement, offer, and acceptance. What this lacks, though, in my view, is that cathartic experience, the translation of the language used. Banks tend to use their own language. Consumers come with a complaint that's not in a language that the average banker really relates to. So that translation effect can be lost. And the active balancing of the information asymmetry between a consumer and the ADR provider, which I think is part of the the really critical function that an ombudsman or a similar ADR type operation provides to the parties. I think that ODR could be very useful for low complexity complaints, such as misunderstandings about basis service satisfaction issues. I'm not looking for it taking my team out anytime soon, because I think the nature of financial services complaints is such that it still is very much a people business that we're involved in, and a lot of the subtleties require that human touch. Next slide, please. I think there is an opportunity, though, for better complaint management systems in the future. A lot of the common pain points that we've all experienced as ADR schemes have been talked about a lot around the international networks. And I think some IT providers have been listening and thinking this through. And they're focusing on improvements to CMS design and functionality and workflow, rather than just working on existing CRM platforms, the customer relationship management that were built for sales activities. They are still struggling to provide that single access source that integrates the three types of information that I mentioned earlier. And it could drive down the cost of better CMS applications, which is especially critical for schemes like mine, which are at the smaller end of the spectrum. But there is a challenge in that to adopt this is going to require us cutting over from our legacy systems, which has cost and risk implications, but also reputational risk, because we've not only paid for these legacy systems, but we've paid significantly to keep them up to date over time. And that sunk cost can create quite a, if you like, a reputational barrier to adoption to new technologies. You've really got to have your governance and your broader stakeholders realizing that sometimes cutting over to a new platform is what's necessary as part of your evolution to the next stage, and to be able to make best use of what technology now enables you to do. Next slide, please.
2 minutes, Doug. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. So the final piece is about the challenges here, and the personal touch. Complainants still feel need to be heard, and technology isn't going to get around that. A lot of the work that we do is that translation. I think that technology can support us, can empower access to us, but it cannot replace us. And I think focusing too much on technology can detract from the development of the critical personal capital, the skills of your team, simple things like telephone skills and interviewing skills, analytical skills, and especially writing skills. The technology tends to be applied to the process, not the complainant experience. And I think Nikki's presentation to follow mine will really show you how a scheme can get that right by remembering the complainant end-to-end experience as they deploy technology in new and exciting ways. The costs and the case file backlog issues are driving the adoption of technology in ways that may detract from the complainant experience if it's not handled carefully. Next slide, please. I'll just touch on this very briefly because cybersecurity is affecting everything we do. I can't change anything in our operation without first thinking through the implications for our resilience from a cybersecurity perspective. And there's a cost associated with this, and a certification imperative that we find ourselves having to be mindful of. And we've now, as a small scheme, had to certify ourselves at the same level as regulators and financial service providers themselves to maintain our integrity. And then the last, I guess perhaps, Jan, I'll leave it at this point. The slides, the last few are available for other folks, and we can handle other stuff in the Q&A to follow. Thank you very much for your attention, folks. It's been a pleasure. Nikki, I guess at this point, I hand off to you for the deep dive on the New Zealand experience.
Thank you very much, Doug, and we look forward to hearing more from you at the Q&A. Look, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai, haere mai, which is a traditional greeting from New Zealand. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. This session, as we all know, is about how technology can enhance financial alternative dispute resolution, or ADI. And we've had the benefit of Doug's presentation and an excellent overview in terms of ADR now and in the future, highlighting some of the benefits as well as some of the challenges going forward. And as I reflected on his presentation, and when we think about the impact of technology on ADR, the adage comes to mind: the more things change, the more they stay the same. A well-known and trusted dispute resolution service is a critical part of a well-functioning economy and society, and it always has been and it always will be. As John Milton, the English 17th century poet, said hundreds of years ago, when complaints are freely heard, deeply considered, and speedily reformed, that is the utmost bound of civil liberty attained that wise men look for. The core elements of ADR are tried and true, but to remain effective and relevant in an increasingly digital world, all ADR schemes must embrace new technology to engage the people that we're here to serve. So I'll briefly touch on the core principles of ADR, then share how our ADR scheme, the Banking Ombudsman scheme in New Zealand, has leveraged technology to improve. Next slide, please. So why does it matter? Taking complaints seriously is the cornerstone of a fair financial industry and sector. Ensuring that consumers have access to good ADR mechanisms is recognised internationally as an essential component of effective financial consumer protection framework. And Jan's already noted the core elements to achieving good ADR. These include accessibility, ensuring that ADR mechanisms are well known, easy to use, and free for consumers to access, and effectiveness, which is about providing fair outcomes. As some academics from the Queen Margaret University noted in their research into core principles in 2013, an unknown remedy is no remedy at all. A crucial role for technology is overcoming some of these obstacles to accessibility, as Jan noted, such as physical distance and remoteness. And as we know, technology continues to change how people look for information and communicate with anyone, anywhere, at any time. We are transcending distance now like never before. But technology has not only changed the way we communicate, it has also altered the way we resolve disputes, as Doug has highlighted in his presentation. Chatbots and virtual assistants have the potential to replace human interaction. We've seen real advances in big data, analytics, and automation, which is accelerating the processing of complaint insights and complex decision-making. Real-time and robo-advice are the order of the day. Finally, technology is also changing people's expectations, creating the potential for a more inclusive and fair system. Next slide, please. So how have we used technology to improve our service? The Banking Ombudsman scheme was established in 1992, nearly 30 years ago. Historically, our scheme dealt with complaints only in writing and worked in relative secrecy. Even with the advent of email, we did little to change our traditional processes. The public could only reach us and vice versa in very limited ways. And it took months and even years sometimes for people to get their problems sorted out through our service. We knew we needed to fundamentally change, to modernise our approach to maintain our relevance going forward. So like many ADR schemes, modern ones, we've customised software for managing our complaint files, very much like Doug talked about. We've ensured our system integrates all the communication channels, our emails, digital records and phone recordings. And we've created portals and forms to make it easier for people to complain to us right from their smartphones or their tablets through apps. We're also able to communicate with people long distance through video conferencing and live chats, and have reached thousands of viewers through our social media platforms. But today I would like to focus on 4 key digital strategies that we have used. The first 3 strategies are about boosting our accessibility, making it easier for people to learn about us and use our service. The final strategy, the sector-wide complaints dashboard, is about enhancing our effectiveness. The complaint dashboard is a significant a very significant initiative using big data and analytics to strengthen our insights. We aim as a scheme to identify and to share insights from complaints to prevent harm, turning complaints from lag indicators to lead indicators. Next slide, please. So the first strategy is about how our members promote our scheme. International good practice expects financial service providers covered by our scheme to tell customers about the scheme, whether on the website, at point of sale, in contracts, or in response to consumer complaints. Historically, banks have informed their customers about us by displaying brochures in their branches and more recently on their websites. However, of course, the way we bank has changed significantly in the last few years. Most of us do our banking online via bank apps and internet banking sites. In New Zealand, fewer than 1% of all banking transactions occur now in person, in branch, and that figure is declining, and branches are closing in response. Most consumers prefer the convenience of online banking, and we've needed to respond to that change. So to improve our visibility amongst bank customers, we now expect our bank members to make information about us more accessible online, including on bank apps and internet banking sites, as well as in bank branches. We also are looking at the way our service is promoted through trusted intermediaries. International good practice also expects ADR schemes to ensure information about them is available through intermediary organisations. And while for many technology is a real benefit, for some it can be a barrier. So a real focus for us has been to try and bridge any digital divides and connecting with those who are less tech savvy. These may be people experiencing financial hardship. They may not know how to find us, or may not necessarily have the skills or confidence to assert their rights. So one of our strategies has been to develop better relationships with trusted intermediaries like community law centres, citizen advice bureaus, or financial counsellors, budget advisors and the like. We've been working on a technology solution to make it easier for the intermediaries to refer people to our service. The new technology will enable automated referrals from the intermediaries' case management systems through to ours, to avoid all the duplication and some of the associated fatigue that people experience having to repeat their stories to multiple organisations. This provides a much more streamlined and user-friendly way for consumers to get the support they need to protect their rights. Next slide, please. The second strategy I'd like to talk about is our public website, which we recently refreshed. The Banking Ombudsman Scheme uses its website as a key communication channel to promote accessibility. The website uses it serves two key functions, which is to provide information and to provide a channel for receiving complaints. We expect a lot from our website. We need it to convey credibility, fairness, and independence, but we also want it to capture our personality, that we're friendly and approachable. We know our users are often under stress, and when people are stressed, they want good information fast. Our old website was dated and tired. It was good on authority, but pretty light on approachability. It was too heavy on content. And when we did some user testing, we saw that people found it hard to decide where to go first for information, partly because it seemed like all of the content was shouting for attention all at the same time. So our previous, as well as that, our previous online complaint form also took a long time to complete. It took 20 steps, and analytics revealed that some people were giving up before they were completing it. Next slide, please. We wanted our website to reflect a much more friendly, fresh and progressive ADR scheme, visually, tonally, and technically. So we approached our website review by flipping things round and focusing on ease and accessibility. We asked, if you're on the bus with not much time, how can we provide a website that guides you to the key information you need right away? Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. We wanted people to know that our process was simple and painless. So we broke it down into 3 easy to follow steps. We also reduced our online complaint form considerably, down to 5 questions, so people could complete it within about 30 seconds. We know that many people can be intimidated by both complaints and money matters, so we try to use simple, welcoming, plain language. We've minimised the formality and tried to accommodate a wide variety and diversity of consumer needs. Next slide, please. So how has that gone? Basically, it's been a great success. We now have information in a number of languages, including sign language, and have received a significant increase in website traffic. The results have been fantastic. In the first 12 months, the website use increased by about 43%. Next slide, please. The next strategy I'd like to talk about is the way we've been using social media. Social media are connecting millions of people around the world to each other and to their organisations. They are ideally suited to the work of the ADR, but many people fear that these very public tools can't work within an ADR's traditional bound of confidentiality and impartiality. Whereas we think that social media is an effective way to boost our reach and engagement by sharing snack-sized bites of information, including insights, warnings, and tips about common issues such as scam and frauds. We also share our media articles through Facebook and LinkedIn and other platforms, boosting and targeting posts to reach certain demographic groups. Using social media has increased and improved our engagement generally, and we've found that we've been able to interact with interest groups and people who might not have heard of us before. It's also enhanced our engagement with the news media. Our followers include journalists, and they're quite quick to pick up on some of our case summaries or other developments that they're interested in. To my mind, the benefits are twofold. We can reach more people directly and instantly, and many more indirectly through the mass media, all through a few posts. So social media is no substitute for the traditional media, but there's no doubt it's revolutionised the way the media works. Next slide, please. Of course, every channel has its risks, and everyone is a published author on social media. And 1 or 2 of our disgruntled customers have used the social media platform as a platform for protest. So certainly there are areas of legitimate concern. However, we generally will remove posts that are defamatory or abusive, and we act very quickly to protect the health and safety of our staff. But in many ways, social media should be used in the same way as any other communication tool. We want to say things that would be happy to be put on the front page of the newspaper or displayed in public, and we must be respectful and professional at all times. So overall, I think the benefits of using social media have far outweighed the risks and the costs. Next slide, please. The final strategy I'd like to share with you is our major digital project, our sector-wide complaints dashboard. Our role is not only to resolve individual complaints, but to try and prevent them from happening in the future to other people. Our goal is to provide a prevention-focused dispute resolution service in which lessons and insights from complaints help improve trust and confidence in the sector. So identifying and sharing this data is a key prevention strategy. Our scheme aims to act as a canary in the coal mine. The complaints data we gather and report on is a vital part of the checks and balance in the system. But we knew we could do an even better job of that if we had visibility across the whole of the complaints system. The financial complaints ecosystem currently works, as Doug has explained, with the financial service providers resolving the majority of the issues in-house and a small number of complaints then escalating to ADR. This system has many obvious benefits for the consumer as issues are resolved directly and quickly, and the relationship is restored in most cases. However, the downside of that is that there hasn't been a central oversight of complaints to see what issues might be trending across the industry. We can and do report on the top themes of complaints coming through our process, but that only represents the most escalated complaints, probably about 5 to 10% of all complaints. We call this the tip of the iceberg. So we've recently developed a dashboard that collects a much wider set of complaints data. It includes internal complaints as well as escalated complaints, so we can provide a much more comprehensive picture of consumer complaints. So how does it work in practice? We collect anonymised complaints data from our financial service providers, the banks, to create a central source of data via an API. It captures details about the types of complaint, number of complaints, and outcome. Data that can then be analysed and presented in a range of ways to the public and other stakeholders, including the regulators. We use Power BI to assist. We offer 3 ways for banks to upload data to our complaints hub in Microsoft's Azure, the cloud, all of which use the API. Banks can either send us their data by manually uploading it to our secure web portal, which has data validation tables to ensure the data meets our dashboard requirements, or they can integrate their case management systems directly so we receive their files automatically. The benefit of a bank integrating their system directly means that we can receive their files daily in real time, providing more analysis as required and in a more timely fashion. Next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, the Complaints at a Glance page provides an overview of the nature and extent of complaints and a breakdown of the issues, products and services customers complain about. You can see that last quarter we saw a slight increase in complaints compared to the previous quarter, with over 27,000 complaints received between October and December last year. And we reached a milestone with over 100,000 complaints recorded in 2020, which is a lot of information and data to work with. Next slide, please. In March this year, we introduced this high-level table of individual bank data. This is the first step towards even greater transparency. It provides a snapshot of the number of complaints each bank receives, market share, complaint share, the time complaints take to resolve, and the proportion resolved. We discourage comparisons of the raw numbers because, as we know, banks vary in size, product offerings, and their ability to capture complaints. High complaint numbers, therefore, could signal a strong commitment to capturing and learning from complaints, no matter how small. And our goal for the dashboard over time is to do a better job at, firstly, highlighting trends, lifting industry standards, preventing complaints, reducing consumer harm, and finally, strengthening trust in the sector. We're not the only ones developing these type of dashboards. In the United Kingdom, the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, has a dashboard that it updates based on reports financial firms supply every 6 months about the number, type, and outcome of complaints that they've received. Similarly, The Australian regulator, the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, ASIC, ASIC, is developing a compulsory complaints data reporting scheme following recommendations coming out of the Ramsay Review in 2017. We're following the same set of data definitions as ASIC to ensure trans-Tasman consistency where appropriate to maximise the efficiency, as many New Zealand banks have parents that are in Australia. We're simply taking a slightly different approach to the regulatory approach. Our dashboard is a voluntary, prevention-driven approach. The dashboard is an opportunity for the sector to lead and shape the way it values the consumer voice. We want to normalise complaints and see them as an opportunity to learn and ultimately proactively prevent consumer harm. We can use this complaint data to ensure that the industry is on track and aligned with community values and expectations. It's about shifting complaints from lag to a lead indicator, seeing them as a treasure, not a toxin. Next slide, please.
2 minutes, Nicola, thank you.
Perfect, this is my last slide. So finally, I'll share the impact of these technology strategies with you. Every 2 years, the ministry that is responsible for consumer protection in New Zealand runs a survey to see how aware people are of different dispute resolution services or ADR schemes that are available to them in New Zealand. The Disputes Tribunal, which is a small claims court, always scores the highest. But as you can see, most people in the graph can know that they can take a claim to a court for a small fee. But we've been very pleased that we have scored a solid second place in the last 3 surveys for awareness. We've also seen a significant increase in complaints to our office in tandem with the implementation of many of these technologies, these strategies. And I'm convinced that part of this is because of the greater availability and openness through these initiatives. Using technology has increased our visibility, our productivity, our connection with stakeholders, and our reputation as an approachable and effective scheme. So from a relatively modest investment, we have reaped enormous benefits from technology. We have reached new audiences and connected with more people who need our help. We've also gained an ability to listen to consumer concerns outside the formal complaint process and channels, allowing us to better fulfill our role. So embracing technology is a theme that permeates every part of a modern ADR scheme and is absolutely critical to our success now and in the future, as Doug has highlighted. However, we need to remember that whatever the advances in technology, people will always be at the heart of good ADR. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share our experience in New Zealand. And I look forward now to handing over so we can listen to the pre-recorded presentation from Deputy Director Liu, talking about how far China has advanced in rolling out ADR with a particular focus on Shanghai FOS. Next slide, please.
Hello everyone, I'm Lu Xiang from Shanghai, China. I'm the Deputy Director of the FOS Shanghai Financial Ombudsman Service Shanghai, China. I'm honored to be recommended by PBOC to attend this seminar organized by the World Bank to share with you the application of China's financial consumer dispute mediation system in the settlement and handling of financial consumer disputes, and discuss how to promote non-litigation settlement of financial disputes through scientific and technological means. China always adheres to the people-centered development philosophy and strives to modernize the national governance system and capacity and develop ADR mechanism and try to involve social forces in resolving disputes. protecting citizens' legitimate rights and interests, and promoting social fairness and justice. In the financial sector, PBOC takes the lead in establishing ADR mechanism for financial consumer disputes. In recent years, on the basis of good international practices, PBOC has promoted the development of financial dispute mediation organizations and establishing a mechanism for connecting them, thus forming China's experience. At present, all provinces in China have established a working mechanism for ADR, and mediation organizations have achieved full coverage. FOS Shanghai is one of the best. I will introduce FOS Shanghai and China's financial consumer dispute mediation system from 5 aspects. First, the development of Shanghai as the international financial center has given birth to the establishment of our office. China is now developing with each passing day. As the vanguard of China's reform and opening up and the pioneer of innovation and development, Shanghai is striving to build an international financial center. In the 2020 GFCI-28 released by Zheyan Group, a British think tank, Shanghai ranked among the top 3 in the world for the first time. Based upon the experience of London and other famous international financial centers, the non-litigation settlement mechanism of financial consumer disputes is a necessary condition for smooth financial transactions. The British Financial Ombudsman Service and Canadian Banking Services and Investment Ombudsman Service are 2 examples. To build Shanghai into an international financial center, it is essential to improve the rule of law in the financial system, and Shanghai must take the lead in the non-litigation settlement of financial disputes and establish third-party financial dispute mediation organizations and establish a fair, just, efficient dispute resolution mechanism. In 2014, in order to build a diversified financial consumer dispute resolution mechanism, protect the legitimate rights and interests of the financial consumers and FSPs, enrich the functions of Shanghai International Financial Center, and facilitate the construction of it, Shanghai government requested the establishment of third-party financial consumer disputes mediation organizations in a notice of key working arrangements for the construction of a Shanghai International Financial Center in 2014. On December 16, 2014, with the joint efforts of Shanghai government, the Shanghai headquarters of PBOC, and the Shanghai Financial Office, FOS Shanghai was established as an independent, private, non-enterprise, third-party professional mediation organization for financial consumer disputes. Its operation is guided by Shanghai headquarters of PBOC, Shanghai High People's Court, and the Shanghai Municipal Bureau of Justice. The establishment of FOS Shanghai has perfected the functions of Shanghai International Financial Center and boosted its construction from many dimensions, such as improving the rule of law in the financial sector and strengthening the protection of financial consumers' rights and interests. Second, FOS Shanghai is based in Shanghai, but it serves the whole country and contributes to the development of the mediation system for financial consumer disputes in China. Since its establishment, FOS Shanghai has always adhered to the purpose of serving the people and has made constant explorations into providing innovative, convenient, and efficient mediation services, and it has helped resolve disputes between financial consumers and FSPs. The caseload has been increasing year on year. As of April 30th, 2021, more than 6,000 financial disputes have been successfully resolved. Mediation has been gaining rising recognition by the parties to disputes. With lots of businesses and rising innovative financial products and services, the FSPs in Shanghai are also seeing increasing financial consumer disputes. In particular, many FSPs have their headquarters in Shanghai, so the parties involved in financial consumer disputes are often distributed all over China and even all over the world. The demand for cross-regional mediation is increasing, while traditional mediation methods have certain limitations, which can hardly meet the ever-changing needs. Although phone call-based mediation is free from distance restriction, it can't facilitate timely and accurate communication of case information and evidence. Offline mediation has the advantage of face-to-face communication. It is difficult to cover all complainants and respondents due to space and geographical limitations. Therefore, FOS Shanghai, as a benchmark pilot organization for the development of ADR designated by PBOC, is designed to serve the whole country in order to handle various cross-regional financial consumer disputes conveniently and efficiently, enhance the availability and enhance consumers' accessibility to it. Under the guidance of a Shanghai headquarters of PBOC, FOS Shanghai began to develop the online mediation system in 2017. And at the end of that year, it launched the first online consumer dispute mediation system in China, the China Financial Consumer Disputes Mediation Network. The parties to disputes can obtain timely mediation services through it. In November 2019, the Supreme People's Court, PBOC, and CBIRC jointly issued a document named Opinions on Comprehensively Promoting the Construction of ADR for Financial Disputes, according to which online dispute resolution must be fully utilized and efforts must be made to improve the functions of online mediation systems, such as the China Financial Consumer Disputes Mediation Network, to promote data exchange between online mediation system and the court mediation platform, to establish an online mechanism that connects the mediation service providers and users, and to actively explore the use of IT to improve the efficiency of a mediation, document service, exchange of information, mediation agreement making, and the judicial confirmation, etc., and encourage the parties to dispute to use ADR services. To implement these instructions, FOS Shanghai has upgraded the mediation network, and in August 2020, the mediation network and the mediation platform of the People's Courts were connected, realizing the objectives of online appointment, mediation, and information exchange. The online connectivity mechanism for litigation and mediation is officially in place. The mediation system has 3 major services and 6 functions, which can provide efficient and convenient services. China's financial consumer disputes mediation system includes the China Financial Consumer Disputes Mediation Network and a mini program which operate respectively on PCs and mobile phones. They operate across regions 24/7 and free from environmental constraints. ID authentication and online signature are used. Financial consumers can get free, convenient, efficient, and fair online dispute resolution services through this system. The mediation system has 3 portals, respectively for consumers, FSPs, and mediation service providers, with different functions designed to meet their needs. Consumers and FSPs can get their needs assessed and disputes mediated through the system. The mediation service providers can manage cases through this system. FSPs and mediation service providers can also conduct personnel and authority management. The 3 major services of the mediation system include consulting and inquiry services. The website has laws, regulations, and case libraries. All users can search laws and regulations and inquire about cases through this website. And all users can log on to the mediation network for AI-enabled consultation. AI robots can answer legal questions, recommend laws and regulations, cases, dispute resolution process to users. Registered users can apply for and participate in mediation online and assign mediation documents. The whole mediation process can be done online. Evaluation services. Registered users can apply for assessment online through mediation network and get professional legal advice from the experts online. The 6 functions are dispute resolution. Both PC and mobile phone-based mediation systems support online application, acceptance, assignment, mediation, agreement making, signing, and case closing. This system and the mediation platform of the People's Courts are connected with the function of data exchange. Financial consumer dispute mediation organizations all over China can connect with local People's Courts through this system. accept the entrustment of courts to conduct mediation, and apply for judicial confirmation by the courts. Intelligent officing. The mediation organizations can use the system to realize the functions of online case circulation and monitoring, risk alert, case statistics, data visualization analysis. So mediation officing has become automatic and intelligent. Next, classified management. Mediation organizations and FSPs can manage the personnel and cases of their own. Organizations and people at different levels have different operating authorizations. Higher level FSPs have access to the cases of lower level FSPs. News and information. This function can display the news and information of the mediation industry and organizations. Legal consultancy. Through this function, you can search and retrieve laws, regulations, and cases, and get legal consultation services from AI and acquire financial and legal knowledge. China's financial consumer disputes mediation system integrates all mediation resources across China. At present, 22 financial consumer dispute mediation organizations from 17 provinces and cities, including Beijing, Shanghai, Guangdong, Shanxi, Heilongjiang, and Guangxi, have joined the system. The mediation organizations can exchange information and share resources and provide high-quality dispute resolution services for financial users all over the country. Now let's look at the application effect of the system. The establishment of the financial consumer disputes mediation system indicates that China's financial consumer disputes mechanism has entered into an intelligent era. By April 30th, 2021, FOS Shanghai has received more than 5,000 mediation applications through this system. The system has played an important role in resolving financial consumer disputes. First, it has enhanced the mediation availability to financial consumers. No matter where they are, they can log onto the mediation network or select mediation organizations through mini programs. Apply for application, get free, convenient, and professional mediation services, and the accessibility to mediation has been increased. Second, higher efficiency. Online mediation saves the time to travel, and it enables the parties to choose the time and the location for mediation more freely. The use of online signature enables timely confirmation of mediation outcomes and agreements, thus improving efficiency. Case circulation is totally done online. All case handling leaves footprints, enhancing the traceability of cases. The system enables automatic, intelligent, and paperless officing, making work more efficient. Third, it enables resource sharing and forms an alliance. The China Financial Consumer Disputes Mediation Network is used by the mediators and experts of many financial consumer mediation service providers and has many case resources, which can be shared by the users. The parties to disputes can log onto the website to find the financial mediation service providers in their regions and seek professional mediation services. It serves as a clear and a smooth channel to get people's grievances redressed, and it solves the problem of uneven mediation ability, scattered resources, and divergent efficiency of mediation in different places. Fourth, it has helped resolve disputes during the pandemic. In the first half of 2020, during COVID-19 outbreak, online mediation was blocked. Under the guidance of PBOC, financial dispute mediation organizations all over China actively used the online mediation model. Relying on the online mediation services provided by the network, a large number of consumer disputes were resolved in a timely and efficient manner. Fifth, it serves as a one-stop online dispute resolution platform that covers complaints, mediation, and decision-making. The Financial Consumer Disputes Mediation Network provides consulting, mediation, and evaluation functions. Financial consumers can not only apply for mediation through the system, but also initiate inquiry about their own disputes. For disputes that can't be resolved through mediation, the parties can apply for neutral evaluation online. The mediation service providers hire experts to conduct professional evaluation of the cases and issue expert opinions based upon the statements and evidence of all parties. The mediation network is also connected with the courts platform. It provides one-stop services for dispute resolution, including online trusting, assignment, mediation, and judicial confirmation. In the future, FOS Shanghai will continue to deepen technical innovation and make best use of our wisdom to better serve our clients. With the rapid development of science and technology, we will continue to deepen the integration of modern technologies, such as big data, blockchain, and AI, with judicial and financial work. We will refine the working mechanism of remediation evaluation, optimize the mediation process, and explore into the future of intelligent mediation. First, we will try to establish a case database. With modern technical means, such as big data, a large number of financial consumer dispute cases originating from mediation can be desensitized and imported into the database, providing users with massive mediation case resources. It is convenient for users to inquire about the cases and predict risks. The cases are desensitized. Sensitive information must be redacted to reduce the risk of information leakage. Second, we will try to establish an intelligent batch processing system for cases alike. The cases of the same batch sent to us by FSPs are usually simple in their merits, but large in number. A mediation process model can be developed through AI, which can realize intelligent online handling of disputes in batches, enhancing efficiency and meeting the massive needs of consumers for resolving disputes. Third, we will try to develop the intelligent call function for cases referred to us by the courts. Years of practices tell us that in many pre-litigation mitigation cases referred to us by the courts, contact with the parties has been lost, and it is not sure whether the parties accept mediation or not. Confirmation of that information takes up a lot of manpower and time. Intelligent call can automatically contact consumers, confirm their wills, and we can manage them separately based upon their attitude towards mediation. And the mediators can plan their next steps accordingly. It not only saves time, but also saves labor cost and improves the work efficiency. Dear guests, at present, in China, we are making unremitting efforts to build a prosperous, strong, democratic, civilized, harmonious, and beautiful modern socialist country. We are trying to strengthen our social governance system, featured by social coordination, public engagement, legal protection, and rule of law. We desire to make our social governance system more socialized, legalized, intelligent, and specialized. The establishment of the aforementioned network is a powerful measure for us to make our social governance system intelligent and specialized. It is also a beneficial practice of empowering mediation with science and technology, making it more intelligent. The network serves as a free, convenient, efficient, and fair one-stop platform for resolving conflicts between financial consumers and FSPs nationwide. It provides a readily available dispute resolution channel for financial consumers and acts as a relief valve and lubricant for the relationship between financial consumers and FSPs. As a Chinese brand of intelligent mediation, it also provides the world with the Chinese experience of intelligent mediation. I hope my introduction can be of some use and help to you. Thank you.
对大家能有所帮助，谢谢大家。
Thank you very much to Director Liu in absentia, and also to Doug and Nicola for their presentations. We have about 10 minutes for questions now. So I'm going to ask the first question of both Doug and Nicola based on a question/comment that we received. So it was commented that it would be useful, you both talked about relevance of information about complaints to address sort of broader issues in relation to FSPs, regulators, and that it would be useful, it was commented, to at least have complaints information that's anonymized going to regulators. I was hoping you could spend a couple of minutes commenting on this, and given the context of the session, particularly how technology could facilitate this. Thank you.
So just to clarify, Jen, you mean in terms of the provision of information to regulators to guide their work?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It happens all the time, but it's a relatively low-tech process on our end. I don't know, Nikki, if it's better on your end, but every quarter we do a download off our CMS onto an Excel spreadsheet, and we provide that to the local regulators in the Channel Islands, and they apply a relatively intelligent but manual approach to analyzing that data to target areas of their own interest. But that's supplemented, and I think it shows the relationship. They're very dependent on us to flag the issues that are coming out of complaint work. So yes, they get the raw data to play with themselves, but we have a memorandum of understanding with both regulators, and their expectation of us is that if we see something in our complaints work that's relevant to their regulatory mandate, that we're on the phone to them immediately and providing that, you know, as Nikki described in her presentation, the canary in the coal mine, that's us. We are the early warning system for the regulator where there are things of a more systemic nature and regulatory interest that show up in individual complaint works. Nikki, does that match your experience?
Yes, Doug, it very much matches our experience. The regulators do rely on us as a key part of their intelligence gathering framework. And like you, we provide regular reports to the regulators identifying trends and issues in terms of products and problems we're seeing. And we're hoping that our new dashboard will also provide greater visibility in terms of the issues that are across the sector. But it is currently quite a manual process as well. It's like literally uploading a spreadsheet in Excel and sharing that with the regulator. So we haven't really enhanced or maximised technology in relation to that yet. Thank
you. So next question is a broader question around, Doug, you mentioned, and Nicola, you also mentioned implementation of some sort of more cutting edge technology. Is this something that only, you know, well-funded large schemes in developed countries realistically can dream and hope for? Or is it something that can go beyond that? As you know, we work a lot with developing countries, a lot of priorities.
This might be a question where Nikki and I have different answers, so it's probably a good one. I'm a bit of a skeptic. Well, I'm a bit of a skeptic on this because I think it's really challenging for small schemes to afford in-house IT capability, especially for advanced applications. The business requirements expertise is lacking in many ADR providers. We know what we're good at, but we're not necessarily good at translating what we do into the business requirements for IT development. External IT support is very expensive, and we're almost all under budget pressures, particularly in when it's about getting at the backlog of case studies. It's not about improving your tech platform. And suppliers are unfamiliar with what we are. We're different animals, and it's sometimes hard for an IT supplier to really understand what we do and how we do it, to be able to provide great advice to us. So from my perspective, the key is to make the best use of what you have. I mean, you can start an ADR scheme with an email account, an Excel spreadsheet, and a means of providing good electronic filing like SharePoint. That is actually functionally all you require. The rest is workflow and how you use those most basic of IT capabilities that most of us can get off the shelf in an hour and get some licenses for. Then you can focus as you learn with applying technology to the pain points, to the things that would make you better. But you actually don't need the big technology solution to start out in this business. You just don't. And I'm saddened to see how skeptical people can be of that because they feel they need the big technology as they come out of the starting gate. Actually, you need the time to learn. to get a sense of what you're trying to do and the unique environment you're trying to do it in before you start spending your limited resources on technology solutions. Nikki, over to you. You're clearly doing wonderful things with your tech, especially on the accessibility side, that I'm not at yet.
Well, Doug, I agree with what you say, but we're actually quite a small and modest scheme. Our annual budget is 3 million New Zealand dollars a year, which is about 1.5 US million, and we've got 16 staff, and we certainly have learned a lot doing this major dashboard project, and there have certainly been some challenges along the way, but we're really proud of what we've been able to achieve with a relatively small investment, and the benefits are huge in terms of maintaining our visibility, being seen as a real influencer in the broader sector, and sharing those insights, because we're all doing this to make a positive difference, and to be able to sort of be involved in a project that ultimately could prevent consumer harm is really sort of engaging and inspiring for our team. So it's been a lot of hard work. You know, there's been some cost, but we're a little scheme that thought we could.
Unfortunately, at the time, I only have one more question that I'm able to ask, but I noticed that the audience has also asked some more specific questions in the chat, and we're going to try to have the expert message or email you answers to some of these. My last question, and sorry, Doug and Nicola, you have only 2.5 minutes to answer it, is particularly the use of technology for people that I think you both mentioned a little bit, struggle themselves to access technology and to have technology. You know, you have all these beautiful ways of connecting, social and the like, but a lot of people even struggle to use it or afford it. Just wondering what you've been thinking about that, and particularly in the COVID pandemic. You know, you heard of people not being able to buy computers or afford computers that they needed to connect. So a few comments on that, please.
If they phone our office, we do it for them. That's the simple workaround. We enter their information into the computer systems if they can't, and that covers off all those other issues, unless, of course, the ability to verbalize is the challenge, in which case we have other means of doing it through, you know, if folks have the ability to send a text, we can work from that too. But the bottom line is you always have workarounds because some people can't handle or have access to the technology. You're quite right.
Yeah, we're like you, Doug, we're really conscious that we need to make ourselves accessible to all our communities, including those with digital skills and people who mightn't be so tech savvy. So it's important that people can pick up a phone and give us a call, or in some cases come in and visit us in person. So we're looking at ways in which we can ensure that all New Zealanders, all consumers can use our service in a way that meets their preferences.
Yeah, we're international, so we can't have the walk-in option, but we'll have people literally reach us on satellite phones from the front line in a refugee camp in Bangladesh. It really can be that simple, and then we'll enter in all their data into our systems for them.
Thank you both. So unfortunately, we're out of time, or otherwise I would have had another list of questions to ask you. So as I said, we'll try and respond to some of the other more specific questions to you individually. But what's left for me to do is to very much thank our speakers, Nicholas Sladden, Douglas Melville, and Luz Young. Thank you all for joining the session and for asking your very interesting questions. Just wanted to remind you that in about half an hour, there is another very, very topical session that might overlap a little bit as well on technology innovation and data privacy implications of digital financial services. So please do try and join that in half an hour. You can use the same link you used to join this session. In a split second or so, a survey will pop up on this session. If you've joined other sessions, I'm sure you're familiar with the routine. So thank you once again all for your interest in the session, and we hope to continue these conversations at some point, even physically face-to-face somewhere. Thank you all, and good morning, good afternoon, and good night.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.